Some encounters are born of chance, but carry the weight of destiny. Some houses echo with emptiness, waiting for someone to bring back the sound of life. And some hearts, closed for so many years, forget they can still beat differently. Until a rainy night, a shy request, and a simple gesture change everything forever. This is the story of a rancher who dined alone, and a woman who had no table at all. How hunger brought more than a request for bread. It brought a chance for a new beginning, the courage to trust, and the discovery that the truest love is born precisely where hope seemed to have died. Subscribe to the channel for heartwarming stories every day. The big house seemed even larger when silence filled it. Thomas Alvarenga adjusted his plate on the long, dark wood table, the same one where, years ago, 8 people used to sit on Sunday nights. Now only he occupied one end. Always the same chair, always the same ritual. Simple soup, day-old bread, water in a thick glass. Outside, the wind swept dust from the yard. The ranch had 20 acres of good land, dairy cattle, a vegetable garden that produced more than he could consume. But all of it seemed to exist in parallel to Thomas's life, as if he were merely managing a world to which he no longer truly belonged. Ever since Selina had died, 5 years this August, the house had lost the smell of baking cake, the sound of laughter on the porch, the light left on in the living room after 8. Thomas had kept working because it was what he knew how to do. He woke before the sun, milking, fencing, chopping wood, feeding. At night he returned to the same chair, the same plate, the same emptiness. The neighbors said he was a man of his word, fair in business, generous to those in need. But they also whispered that Thomas Alvarenga was turning to stone, that he worked too much, that he never smiled, that it was a shame a man still young like that, burying himself alive. He knew the comments, he didn't care, or he pretended not to. That June night, the cold was biting. The oil lamp flickered on the table, casting long shadows on the adobe walls. Thomas brought the spoon to his mouth, chewed slowly, and looked at the empty chair opposite him. Sometimes he imagined Selina sitting there, smiling that way of hers, quiet and certain. Other times, he just ate. That's when he heard it. A sound so low he almost mistook it for the creaking of wood. But no, it was a knock. Timid, hesitant. Thomas frowned. No one came out here this late. The dirt road connecting the ranch to town became impassable in the rain, and it had been raining for 3 days. He stood up slowly, wiped his hands on the dish towel, crossed the living room and opened the door. What he saw made him step back. A woman, soaked, much too thin. Her dress clung to her body, trembling with her. Dark hair plastered to her pale face, and her eyes, deep set, frightened but firm, were asking for something her mouth couldn't yet say. "Good evening, sir," she whispered, her voice hoarse from the cold. "I'm sorry to bother you. I just wanted to know if you had a piece of bread. Anything. I'll pay you back, I swear." Thomas stood frozen, holding the door. The rain fell behind her, dark and heavy. The woman shivered so much he was afraid she would collapse right there on the stone step. "Come in," he said without much thought. She hesitated. "I don't want to be a bother. Just the bread, if you could." "Come in," Thomas repeated firmer, and he opened the door wider. She stepped inside, leaving a trail of water on the wooden floor. She stopped in the middle of the room, hugging herself, her eyes downcast. Thomas closed the door, locking the wind outside, and for the first time in 5 years, he felt the house was less empty. Thomas lit another lamp and gestured to the chair closest to the wood-burning stove. "Sit there." The woman obeyed without a sound, her hands clasped in her lap, dripping water onto the floor. He added more wood to the fire, grabbed a clean cloth and handed it to her to dry off a bit. She accepted the cloth carefully, as if it was something precious, and slowly wiped her face. Thomas heated the rest of the soup, cut a thick slice of cornbread, and added butter. He served it all in a deep bowl and placed it in front of her. "Eat." She looked at the plate. swallowed hard. I can't accept without paying. I have some change here. She reached into the soaked pocket of her dress and pulled out a few crumpled coins. Thomas shook his head. Keep that. Eat before it gets cold. She remained still, her eyes welling up. Then she picked up the spoon with trembling fingers and brought it to her mouth. The first spoonful went down slowly, as if her body had forgotten what warmth was. The second came faster. On the third, she closed her eyes and a tear rolled down. Thomas looked away. He didn't know how to deal with crying. He refilled a mug with reheated coffee and placed it beside her. "Where are you coming from?" he asked, leaning against the counter, arms crossed. She wiped her mouth with the back of her hand. "From far away. I walked along the road. I passed 2 ranches before this one. No one opened the door." "Traveling alone?" She nodded, her eyes downcast. "I'm going anywhere that will take me." Running away. The word came out harsher than Thomas intended. She shrugged her shoulders but didn't deny it. "From bad people," she murmured. "From a place where I couldn't stay anymore." Thomas observed her face. There were no visible scars, but there was an exhaustion that went beyond the physical. He knew that kind of weariness. It was the kind that came from within. "Do you have a name?" "Vera Lima. Thomas Alvarenga. This is my land." She looked around, as if only now noticing where she was. The simple but clean room, the large table, the bare walls, the silence. "You live alone?" "I do." He offered no further explanation. She didn't ask. When she finished eating, Vera stood up, still trembling, and began to clear the dishes. "Let me at least wash these. To pay for dinner." Thomas was about to say it wasn't necessary, but he saw the determination in her gesture. He nodded. Vera filled the basin with warm water, soaped the dishes slowly, and rinsed them carefully. Thomas stood there leaning, watching. There was something strange about seeing someone in that kitchen again. Strange, but not bad. When she finished, she dried her hands on the apron he had left hanging and turned to him. "Thank you, Mr. Thomas. From the bottom of my heart. I'll be leaving now." He looked at the window. The rain continued, stronger. "Where are you going?" "I don't know yet, but I'll manage. In this rain you won't get anywhere. Stay until morning. There's a room in the back. It used to be for the maid, but I haven't used it in a long time." Vera's eyes widened. "I can't." "You can. Tomorrow morning you can leave if you want, but not tonight." She was silent, her eyes fixed on the floor. Then she nodded, almost imperceptibly. "Thank you." Thomas led her to the small room in the back. He lit the oil lamp, changed the sheet on the narrow bed, and brought a wool blanket. Vera stood frozen in the doorway, clutching the empty bag against her chest. "If you need anything, just call," he said before leaving. "Mr. Thomas?" He paused. "You're a good man." Thomas didn't answer. He simply closed the door, slowly, and returned to the long table, where his plate still waited cold and untouched. But for the first time in a long time, he wasn't sitting alone with his memories. Vera woke before the sun. Her body ached, but it was a different ache, not of fear but of rest. She rose from the narrow bed, smoothed her still damp dress, and slipped out of the room, careful not to make a sound. Thomas was already in the kitchen. Coffee was brewing on the stove, and he was slicing cheese on a cutting board. "Good morning," she said softly. He looked up. "Good morning. Sleep well?" "Better than I have in months." He gestured to the chair. "Sit. There's coffee and cornbread." Vera hesitated, then obeyed. They ate in silence, only the clink of spoons against mugs and the crackle of the wood fire. When she finished, she started to clear the dishes again, but Thomas stopped her with a gesture. "No need. You're moving on?" Vera looked out the window. The rain had stopped, but the sky was still heavy. The road would be a muddy mess. "I am. I don't want to overstay my welcome." Thomas was quiet for a moment, stirring his coffee. If you want to stay a few more days until the road dries out, you're welcome to. There's work here, nothing too strenuous. Cooking, the garden, the chickens, I'll pay you. Vera blinked, incredulous. You're offering me work? For me? I am. It's not charity. I need someone to help around the house. I haven't been taking good care of things myself for a while. She felt a lump in her throat. I accept. But only until I save enough to move on. It's a deal. And just like that, without another word, Vera Lima stayed. In the following days, a routine settled in. Tomas would head out to the fields before dawn. Vera managed the house, cleaning, cooking, harvesting vegetables from the garden, feeding the chickens. In the evenings, they'd have dinner together, still mostly in silence. But it was a less heavy silence. The nearest town was about 3 miles away. On Saturday, Tomas went to pick up supplies. Vera stayed at the farm, washing clothes in the outdoor tub. That's when their closest neighbor, Mrs. Mirtes, showed up with a basket of eggs. "Good morning," she said, all smiles but with curious eyes. "Came to bring some eggs for Tomas. Is he around?" "He went to town," Vera replied, wiping her hands on her apron. Mirtes sized her up from head to toe. "Ah, so you're the young lady he brought with him." Vera felt the weight of her gaze. "I work here, I help around the house." "I see." Mirtes smiled, but it wasn't a warm smile. "And are you related to him?" "No, ma'am." "A family friend?" "No, I needed work. He gave me a chance." Mirtes nodded slowly, as if filing everything away mentally. "That's good. Tomas is a decent man. It would be a shame if someone took advantage of him." Vera swallowed hard, but kept her voice steady. "I'm not taking advantage of anyone, Mrs. Mirtes." "Of course not, dear. Of course not." The neighbor left the eggs and departed, but Vera knew the conversation wasn't over. That night, Tomas returned quieter than usual. He put away the groceries in silence. Vera prepared dinner, but he barely touched his plate. "Did something happen?" she asked. He sighed. "Folks in town are talking. About you." Vera's chest tightened. "What are they saying?" "That you just showed up out of nowhere, that nobody knows who you are, that you might be running from something." "And you? What do you think?" Tomas met her gaze. "I think everyone carries what they need to carry, and that's nobody else's business." Vera felt her eyes sting. "I didn't come here to cause trouble, Mr. Tomas. If you want me to leave, I don't." The firmness in his voice surprised her. "But I need to know one thing, Vera. Is anyone looking for you? Anyone who might show up here?" She lowered her eyes. There was. A man. "But I came from far away. I don't think he'll make it this far. And if he does..." Vera lifted her face, and there was something steely in those tired eyes. "I'll handle it. Alone. I won't bring danger to your home." Tomas nodded slowly. "You're not alone, as long as you're here." And in that moment, with that simple sentence, something shifted. Vera felt for the first time in years that perhaps there was a place for her in the world. And Tomas felt that the promise he had just made was more than charity. It was commitment. The days took on a shape. Vera would wake with the rooster's crow, light the fire, and make the coffee. Tomas would enter the kitchen, still with dew on his boots, hat in hand, and they'd share their first meal together, not with many words, but with each other's presence. Afterward, he'd head to the pasture. She'd stay at the house. But gradually, Vera began to venture out more. She helped in the garden, watered the beds, picked tomatoes, kale, and squash. Tomas taught her to identify the herbs: rosemary, mint, lemon balm. She learned quickly, her hands skilled and attentive. "Did you work on a farm before?" he asked one day, as they weeded side by side. "As a child. My parents had a small piece of land. Small, but it was enough to live on. After they died, I went to live with an aunt. She didn't like me. Said I was a burden." Tomas didn't reply, but continued beside her, pulling weeds with more force than necessary. Vera also started tending to the chickens. She had a knack with animals. She'd talk to them as she scattered corn, and the chickens would peck around her feet as if they'd known her for years. In the afternoons, Tomas mended fences, tended to the cattle. Vera washed clothes, ironed with a charcoal iron, mended what was torn. She found, in a chest in the back, a patchwork quilt that Selina had started and never finished. She asked Tomas if she could continue it. He looked at the quilt for a long moment. "You can." Vera sewed at night by lamplight, while Tomas read the old newspaper or simply sat, listening to the sound of the needle piercing the fabric. One day, she hummed, softly, an old lullaby her mother used to sing. Tomas looked up from his paper but said nothing. He just listened. When she realized he was listening, she stopped. "Sorry, I shouldn't." "Don't stop," he said, his voice rough. "It's been a long time since this house had music." Vera started humming again, and Tomas closed his eyes, letting the sound fill the empty space he had carried for so long. One morning, Tomas called her. "Come with me. I want to show you something." She followed him to the top of a hill behind the house. From there, you could see the whole farm, the green pastures, the winding creek, the mountains in the distance. The wind carried the scent of wet earth and grass. "It's beautiful," Vera murmured. "It is. My grandfather started here. My father continued. Now it's mine. You're proud of it." "I am." She used to say it was where God lived. I never really understood what she meant, but now... He paused. "Now I think I do." Vera said nothing. She just stood there beside him, watching the world unfold before them. That night, during dinner, Tomas asked, "Can you read?" "Yes, my mother taught me." He got up, went to the cupboard, and returned with a worn-out book. It was Selina's. She liked to read aloud before bed. I was never good at it. "But if you want, you can read to me." Vera took the book carefully. It was a collection of simple stories, tales of country folk, of faith and struggle. That night, she read the first story aloud. Tomas listened, eyes closed, and for the first time in 5 years, he slept without the weight of loneliness. The week began with clear skies, but on Wednesday, the wind changed. Tomas looked at the horizon and frowned. "A storm's coming," he said. "A big one." Vera helped bring the chickens in early, secure the barn doors, cover the firewood. Tomas locked the cattle in the covered pen and reinforced the house windows. That night, the wind howled. The rain started slow, then came down hard, hammering the tin roof. Vera made soup, but neither of them had much of an appetite. The storm made everything tense. It was around 10 o'clock when they heard the noise. A crash, then a cry. Tomas sprang to his feet. "She's still in there." He grabbed the lantern, opened the door. Vera followed him. The rain soaked them in seconds. Tomas ran toward the barn. The door had been smashed open, banging in the wind. Inside, a beam had fallen, and beneath it, trapped, was a young calf mooing in pain. "Hold the light," Tomas ordered. Vera raised the lantern. He tried to lift the beam, but it was too heavy. "Don't go in alone," she yelled over the roar of the rain. "Then help me." They positioned themselves. Tomas counted to 3. They lifted together with all their might. The beam moved just a little, but enough. The calf scrambled out, limping. Tomas examined its leg. It was broken. "I need to splint it, now." Vera ran back to the house, grabbed planks, rope, clean cloths. She returned, drenched. Tomas carefully immobilized the animal's leg, tying it securely but not too tight. The calf trembled, its eyes wide with fear. Vera knelt beside it, stroked its wet muzzle. "Easy, girl. You're going to be okay." Tomas looked at Vera, surprised by the tenderness in her voice. "You've got a way with animals. Animals can sense when we're scared. If we're calm, they are too." They stayed there until the calf stopped trembling. Then they moved it to a dry corner of the barn, covered it with straw, left water and feed nearby. When they returned to the house, they were soaked, covered in mud, and exhausted. Vera lit the fire, heated water. Tomas took off his wet shirt, leaving on only his undershirt. She changed in the bedroom, returned in a nightgown with a blanket over her shoulders. Tomas made strong tea. They sat by the stove, drinking in silence. "Thank you," he said. "For what?" "For helping. I couldn't have done it alone. We didn't do much." "We did. You're stronger than you look." Vera lowered her eyes. "I learned to be. I didn't have a choice." Tomas took another sip of tea. "What were you running from, Vera, really?" She was silent for a long time. Then she took a deep breath. "A man. I got married too young. I thought it would be different. But he drank. He hit me. Told me I was good for nothing. When I lost the baby, he said it was my fault." Her voice trembled. "I endured 2 more years, until the day he locked me in the room for 3 days. No food, no water. When he went into town, I grabbed what I could and ran. Came far away, very far. But I know he swore he'd find me." Tomas clenched his fists. "If he shows up here, he'll have to go through me." Vera looked up, saw the firmness on his face. "You don't have to do that." "I do. Nobody deserves to live in fear." She felt tears welling up, but she didn't hold them back. Tomas, not quite knowing what to do, held out his hand. Vera took it, squeezed it tight. And there, in the kitchen, lit only by the fire, they understood that the bond between them was no longer just employer and employee. It was protection, trust, something more. On Sunday, Tomas had to go into town to sell milk and buy medicine for the calf. Vera wanted to stay, but he insisted. "Come with me. It'll be good to get out." She hesitated, but agreed. The town was small. A central square, the church, 3 general stores, the pharmacy. When Tomas parked the wagon, there were already people in the square. Some greeted them, others just looked. Vera stayed close to him, quiet, her hands clasped over her old bag. Tomas went into the pharmacy and bought the medicine. When he came out, he found Mrs. Mirtes talking to Vera. "So, dear, are you liking working for Tomas?" "Yes, ma'am, I am." "That's good. It's just that people are talking, you know. They say it's strange, a young woman living alone with a widower. It gives them something to gossip about." Vera felt her face heat up. "I work there, that's all." "Of course, child, I know, but you know how small towns are, people talk." Tomas approached. "Good morning, Mrs. Mirtes." "Tomas, I was just chatting with Vera here." "I see. And what is it people are talking about?" Mirtes gave a nervous little laugh. "Oh, nonsense. You know, idle gossip." "Then it's best not to listen," Tomas said dryly. He took Vera's arm and led her to the wagon. She climbed up, trembling. He took the reins and touched up the horses. On the way back, Vera couldn't hold it in. "I shouldn't have come." "You have every right to come." "But people are talking. It could ruin your reputation." "My reputation isn't worth more than your dignity." Vera looked at him surprised. "Why do you do this? Why do you protect me?" Tomas was silent for a moment, then slowly, "Because I know what it's like to be alone. I know what it's like to lose someone and think you'll never feel anything again. And I know what it's like to meet someone who makes the house feel less empty." She felt her chest tighten. "Tomas, you don't need to say anything. I just want you to know you're not alone." Vera wiped away a tear that insisted on falling. When they reached the farm, she got down from the wagon, but before going into the house, she turned. "I don't want to be alone anymore either." And Tomas, for the first time in years, smiled. But the peace didn't last long. The next morning, a man appeared on the road, tall, thin, with hard eyes. He knocked on the door with force. Vera was in the kitchen. When she heard the knock, her blood ran cold. She recognized the sound, the force, the anger. Tomas opened the door. "Good morning. How can I help you?" Tomas didn't move. "And who would your wife be?" "Vera Lima." The silence was sharp. Tomas looked back. Vera stood in the kitchen doorway, pale, her hands trembling. "I'm not your wife anymore, Otavio," she said, her voice firm despite the fear. Ottavio took a step forward, but Tomas blocked his path. "I think you should leave. She's my wife. I came to take what's mine. She doesn't belong to anyone." Ottavio gave a bitter laugh. "And who are you? Her new owner?" Tomas clenched his fists, but kept his voice calm. "I own this land, and as long as she's here, no one lays a finger on her." Ottavio spat on the ground. "This isn't over." He turned and left. Vera collapsed into a chair, trembling. Tomas closed the door and knelt in front of her. "He's not taking you." "He doesn't give up, Tomas. He never gives up." "Then neither do I." And for the first time, Vera believed that maybe, just maybe, she could have a future without fear. Ottavio didn't return that day, nor the next, but Vera knew he was nearby. She could feel it. Tomas reinforced the locks and asked the foreman of a neighboring ranch to keep an eye on the road. In town, rumors spread like wildfire. They said Vera was married, that she'd run off from her husband, that Tomas was harboring someone else's wife. The priest even sent word, asking Tomas to come for a talk. He went. Father Augustine was old, with shaky hands and tired eyes. He received Tomas in the sacristy. "My son, I know you're a good man, but I need to warn you. What you're doing could cause trouble. I'm just giving shelter to someone in need." "She's married, Tomas. She's a victim. There's a difference." The priest sighed. "I understand. But in the eyes of the law, in the eyes of the church, in the eyes of God," Tomas interrupted. "What matters more, the law or mercy?" Father Augustine fell silent. "You're right, but be careful, my son. The world doesn't always understand mercy." Tomas returned to the ranch more determined. He talked to Vera that night. "I need to know something. Are you still legally married?" "I am. I never got a divorce. Ottavio never wanted to sign." "Then we'll fix that. I'll find a lawyer. We'll file for legal separation." "That costs money, Tomas." "Doesn't matter. And if it doesn't work out?" He held her hands. "It will." But 3 days later, Ottavio returned. This time, he wasn't alone. He brought 2 men and a paper. He knocked on the door. Tomas answered, "I've come for my wife and I have a court order." Tomas took the paper. It was a summons. Vera was to appear in the county courthouse in 5 days for a custody and marital reconciliation hearing. Reconciliation. Tomas looked up. She doesn't want to go back. It doesn't matter what she wants. The law is on my side. Vera appeared behind Tomas. "I'll go," she said, her voice firm. "I'll go to the hearing." "But I'm not going back with you." Ottavio smiled cruelly. "We'll see." When they drove away, Vera broke down. Tomas held her. "He'll take me back. I know he will." "He won't. I won't let him." "How? He has the law on his side." Tomas took a deep breath. "Then we'll change that." That night he wrote letters to a lawyer in the big city, to the justice of the peace, to the doctor who served the town and who, months ago, had seen the marks on Vera's body when she'd fallen ill. He requested testimonies. He gathered evidence, and deep in his heart, he offered a silent prayer. On the day of the hearing, Tomas wore the suit he'd worn to Selina's funeral. Vera put on her simplest dress, tied back her hair, and tried not to tremble. They went together in the wagon down the dusty road. When they arrived at the courthouse, Ottavio was already there. He smiled when he saw Vera. "Welcome back." She didn't respond. She just held Tomas's hand tightly. And they went inside. The room was small, stuffy, with peeling paint on the walls and an old fan spinning slowly. The judge, a man with thick glasses and a tired look, sat behind the dark wooden desk. Ottavio and his lawyer occupied one side. Vera, Tomas, and the lawyer Tomas had hired sat on the other. The judge flipped through the papers. "Mr. Ottavio Mendez requests marital reconciliation with Mrs. Vera Lima, his wife. Mrs. Vera, do you have anything to declare?" Vera stood up, her legs trembling. "I do, Your Honor. I don't want to go back." He mistreated me. He hit me. He locked me up. I ran because I feared for my life." Ottavio's lawyer stood up. "Your Honor, the wife is clearly being influenced by third parties." He pointed at Tomas. "This man gave her shelter, took advantage of her vulnerability." Tomas clenched his fists, but his lawyer restrained him. "Your Honor," said Vera's lawyer, "I have here a medical report signed by Dr. Almeida, attesting to old injuries consistent with assault. I also have testimonies from neighbors who heard screams coming from Mr. Ottavio's house. And I have a letter from Father Augustine, who knows Mrs. Vera's character and attests to her honesty." The judge picked up the documents and read them silently. Ottavio shifted in his chair. "Mr. Ottavio," the judge said without looking up, "do you have anything to say about these accusations?" "They're lies, all fabricated. She wants to defame me. Lies." Vera raised her voice. "And the marks on my body, and the 3 days I was locked up without water, and the baby I lost after you pushed me." The room fell silent. The judge took off his glasses and rubbed his eyes. "Mr. Tomas Alvarenga, do you have anything to declare?" Tomas stood up slowly. "I do, Your Honor. I didn't know Mrs. Vera before she came to my door asking for food. I gave her shelter because that's what any decent person would do. She works on my ranch, earns a fair wage, has her own room. I've always treated her with respect. And if I could, I'd ask Your Honor to grant her a divorce, because no one deserves to live chained to someone who only brings pain." The judge looked at Vera. "Do you want a divorce?" "Yes, Your Honor, with all my heart." The judge made a note. Then he looked at Ottavio. "Mr. Ottavio, I will deny your request for reconciliation, and I will initiate legal separation proceedings. Mrs. Vera will remain in her own custody until a new hearing." Ottavio stood up, furious. "This is injustice. She's my wife." "She is a human being," the judge replied dryly. "And she has the right to her own life. Next case." Ottavio left, slamming the door. Vera felt her legs weaken. Tomas held her. "It's over," he whispered. "It's over." She cried right there, in front of everyone. She cried from relief, from exhaustion, from hope. When they left the courthouse, the sun was high. Tomas stopped in the town square and bought 2 pieces of cornbread. They sat on the bench under the ipe tree. "Thank you," Vera said, "for everything. You don't need to thank me. You fought. You were brave. I couldn't have done it alone." Tomas looked at her. "And you don't have to be alone anymore. If you want, you can stay. Not as an employee, as..." He hesitated. "As someone who matters." Vera smiled, for the first time in a long time. "I want to stay." And the two of them returned to the farm, side by side, knowing the road ahead would still be long, but that now they were walking it together. The following months were a time of waiting. The divorce proceedings moved slowly, as everything involving paperwork and the law tended to do. But Vera was at peace. She worked on the farm, tended the vegetable garden, finished the patchwork quilt, and placed it on the bed in the room that was now hers. Tomas and Vera developed a comfortable routine. He taught her about the land. She taught him how to smile again. They had dinner together every night, talked about their day, and planned improvements for the farm. The town, little by little, accepted them. Mrs. Mirtes stopped gossiping. Father Augusto discreetly blessed them. Even the doctor commented for anyone who would listen that he had never seen Tomas looking so well. But Ottavio hadn't given up. One dry, hot October night, Vera woke up to the smell of smoke. She got up, startled, and ran to the window. The barn was on fire. "Tomas!" she screamed. He was already awake, pulling on his boots. They ran out. Flames soared high, illuminating the night. The animals moaned, desperate. "Let the livestock out!" Tomas yelled. Vera opened the corral. The cows stampeded out. Tomas grabbed buckets, started throwing water. Vera helped. But the fire was fierce, fueled by the wind and dry straw. That's when they saw him. Ottavio, standing at the edge of the fence, watching, a smile on his face. "You," Tomas roared. Ottavio shrugged. "Just came to see the show." Tomas dropped the bucket and lunged forward. Ottavio ran. Tomas followed, furious, but Vera held him back. "Let him go! The barn!" Tomas turned back. They fought the fire until dawn. When they finally managed to extinguish it, the barn was destroyed. Only ashes and burnt wood remained. Vera collapsed on the ground, exhausted. Tomas sat beside her, his face covered in soot. "It was him," she said. "It was Ottavio. I know. He won't stop." Tomas took a deep breath. "Then I'll stop him." The next day, Tomas went to the police station. He filed a report. The sheriff promised to investigate, but Tomas knew that in a small town, these things took time. He returned home determined. "I need to talk to you," he said to Vera. She stopped sweeping the ashes. "What is it?" "I want us to get married." Vera's eyes widened. "Tomas, I know your divorce isn't final yet, but when it is, I want to marry you. For real, in church, in front of everyone." She felt her eyes welling up. "Why?" "Out of pity. Because I love you." The word hung in the air. Vera couldn't speak. Tomas moved closer. "I love you, Vera. I don't know when it started. Maybe that first night, when you came in soaking wet. Maybe when you sang for the first time, or when you helped save the calf. I just know I don't want to live without you anymore," Vera cried. She hugged him tightly. "I love you too." They stood there, amidst the ashes, embracing. And somehow, in the midst of destruction, something new was born. 2 weeks later, the divorce was finalized, and a week after that, Ottavio was arrested. Evidence was found that he had set the barn on fire. He was sentenced to 3 years. Vera was free. On their wedding day, the small church was full. Vera wore a simple white dress she had sewn herself. Tomas wore the same suit, but this time with a smile on his face. Father Augusto married them. "I now pronounce you husband and wife." And when Tomas kissed Vera, the entire church erupted in applause. The house was never quiet again. Vera planted flowers in the garden, painted the living room walls a soft yellow, and changed the curtains. Tomas rebuilt the barn, bigger and stronger than before. They bought new chickens, a pig, 2 goats. And on their first anniversary, Vera shared the news. She was pregnant. Tomas said nothing. He just hugged her tightly and cried. Their daughter was born in May, on a rainy, fragrant morning. She had Vera's eyes and Tomas's smile. They named her Laura, the house filled with life. Baby cries, laughter, music. Vera sang while rocking her daughter. Tomas told bedtime stories. The long table, which had echoed with emptiness for so long, now had voices. Vera at the head, Tomas beside her, Laura in her lap, learning to eat mush. Mrs. Mirtes visited, bringing sweets. Father Augusto baptized Laura in the little church. The entire town attended the celebration. One night, after putting Laura to sleep, Vera and Tomas sat on the porch. The sky was starry, the air cool. "Do you remember that night?" Vera asked. "Which one?" "The first one. When I knocked on the door. I remember. I was so ashamed, so hungry, so afraid. And now?" Vera smiled. "Now I have a home." Tomas took her hand. "We have a home." Vera looked at the house, at the light coming from the window, at the crib where Laura slept peacefully. "Thank you for opening the door that night. Thank you for knocking." And there, on that porch, under the stars, they understood what Selina had always known, that this place was where God lived. Not because it was beautiful or prosperous, but because there was love, care, forgiveness. There was life. The patchwork quilt Vera had finished was on their bed. Each piece of fabric told a story. The dress she had worn when she arrived, Tomas's old shirt, Laura's receiving blanket, the cloth that had dried tears, the blanket that had warmed cold nights. It was their story, stitched in silence, woven with patience, embroidered with faith. And every night, before going to sleep, Tomas and Vera gave thanks, not with elaborate words, but with simple gestures. A kiss on the forehead, a tight hug, a whispered, "Sleep well." Because they knew that the greatest blessing was not the farm, nor the abundant harvest, nor the beautiful house. It was the other. It was knowing they were no longer alone, and that finally, the table had a voice. If this story touched you, subscribe to the channel and activate notifications to receive new stories every day. What would you do in their place? Comment and share with someone special.